Welcome to Red Ice Creations Radio. My name is Henrik Palmgren and we are broadcasting from Sweden. The website is redicecreations.com and we are glad that you are here today, tuned in. I hope you've been having a good time here at the end of December, whether or not you've been enjoying the holidays, a few days off, celebrating or not. It's good to have you here, and I hope that you've been having a good time. This is our last program in the year 2007, and we're going to spend this program talking about one aspect of what might be an upcoming issue in the coming year, or even further down the road. Our guest is Kent Daniel Bentkowski from controversy-papers.net. Kent has been with us previously on this program, and today we're going to talk about a paper or a report that Kent wrote back in 2005 called Will You Survive the Coming Financial Crash? That looked into all of this with the economic system, home mortgage, and the housing market bubble. Very timely topic to bring up here at the end of the year. We're also going to talk a little bit about the SPP, Security and Prosperity Partnership, or the North American Union Front. So much more on that later on, but let's bring on our guest here. So welcome to the program, Kent. Thank you for coming back on.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Henrik, and happy holidays, everyone.
Absolutely. Happy holidays. You've been having a good time during the holidays, relaxing or keeping busy, working?
Yes, I've been working on my forthcoming book, and I'm about 90 pages into the manuscript at this point. And, of course, I've taken some time off to relax and enjoy my son and his company and the company of my family and friends as well.
Absolutely. It's time to. This is a time to take a few days off. That's absolutely right. Need to relax once in a while too, not only working. But I'm glad to hear that the book is coming along and that it's in the progress of work, so to speak. Okay, Kent. Our topic here today, the coming financial crash. The report that you wrote back in 2005. And I think it's a quite appropriate topic too, and the timing of it, of course, too. Just going into the business section of BBC here today, and just reading a few headlines here. Basically, it says, are we going to see a major economic slowdown in 2008? Another one was home prices fall for the second month in the UK. Another one was US home sales fall to a 12-year low. And even financial, reporters from the BBC is kind of predicting or forecasting some kind of change, I guess, in 08 here. So, the question is if this is a downward spiral, or, will the bubble pop, or will this slowly kind of lose all its air, and maybe even another market will inflate instead, just like the housing market kind of did. What do you think, Kent?
Well, here in the United States, we're in serious trouble at this point. Our deficit federally is well over $9 trillion at this point. Excuse me. And with a $9 trillion federal debt, there really is no chance of that being paid off. Furthermore, we have this escalation of these wars in the Middle East, the surge and the expansion of the war into Iran, possibly into Pakistan, which they announced on the heels of the assassination on the 27th of December.
Yeah.
And so those factors alone are deeply concerning to those of us who understand the financial fundamentals. And, Henrik, the whole idea behind all of this, and the reason I wrote this report, is because people are not taught correctly about finance in school.
Mm-hmm.
And they are not taught what I refer to in the report as real-world math. It's this theoretical, algebra, geometry, trigonometry, physics, and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
They don't teach you about home mortgages. They don't teach you how to balance your checkbook or balance a business ledger.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about those issues in this report, and also to talk about, the truth about inflation as well. Inflation is represented to us as the result of a supply and demand issue, and actually what it relates to is it relates to the excess of printing of money beyond the gross domestic product, which is the value of all the goods and services produced by a country within a year's time.
Mm. I mean, you were speaking about what you call kind of a real world math, and in your report that you wrote, I know that you actually tied this together with something that Charlotte Thompson Iserbyt wrote about, or stated, I guess, during she was one of the, I think she was an economic advisor during the Reagan era or something like that, if I'm not mistaken, and she wrote about this kind of plan that she called the dumbing down of America. She also has a book out on this issue or subject, basically about, the students aren't, allowed to, learn about the things that you just talked about how to, how basic economics work, and I guess that this kind of ties in with everything because of the fact that the Federal Reserve System is the way it is. There is an interest there that people shouldn't learn the real math about this stuff, because then the illusion, I guess, of the Federal Reserve would collapse, right?
Yes, that's correct. Now, Mrs. Iserbyt, she was part of Ronald Reagan's education department.
Uh-huh. Mm.
And what she actually did is one night after hours, she had brought a U-Haul to her office, a U-Haul moving van, and packed it full of documents and reports that she had in her office. She took these home and then later transferred them to a safe place. The very next morning, she resigned from her position, and ever since then, she's been an advocate for this, as you just mentioned, she refers to as the dumbing down of America. In her book, she describes this as the result of an info war against the American people by the government. And she specifically says that this is a war that is fought using psychological methods. It has taken place over a 100-year time frame, and we've heard that mentioned in relation to the War on Terror, too. She also mentioned that this was a much more deadly war than any other in which our country has ever been involved. And the reason being for this is that it is much more detrimental to the country as a whole than a war that might take a few years to transpire and run its course. So from there, she also mentions that this is a war that the typical person has no knowledge of whatsoever. Now, when I was in school, and I graduated high school in 1981, I was continuously asking my math teachers why don't you teach real-world math?
Mm-hmm.
And they kept answering, well, the reason we, do not cover this is because it's not in the curriculum, it's not mandated by the school board
Mm-hmm.
or the state education department. So they had this convenient excuse which pushed off the responsibility from their shoulders to the shoulders of the individuals making and drawing up the curriculum.
Always, yeah.
Passing the buck, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. So do you think that this is connected here? Because I know that, Charlotte Iserbeet, I think this was one from one of the paragraph in your report that while she was attending a meeting with the Progressive Education Association, the meeting was chaired by Dr. Siegler, I think, one of the Education Committee of the Council on Foreign Relations. So we're back to those guys again, huh?
Yeah. They always seem to have their hands in the midst of these nefarious goings-on.
Yeah.
And, basically the idea here is that people are much easier to take advantage of, financially or otherwise, when they are completely misinformed and, more to the point, completely uninformed about certain issues.
Mm-hmm.
For example, with the home mortgage, for instance, they represent interest rate as being, 5, 6, 7%, and they use a mathematical technique which is called compounded interest. And by the time that interest is compounded over that 30 years that the individual holds that mortgage, that 7% suddenly turns into 140% interest. So in effect, you're paying several times for the same house.
Yeah, of course.
This was a reason why I paid cash for my house.
Good idea.
We can talk about that in a little bit too.
Sure. Well, that's a good idea for those who for those who have the cash. I mean, that's not the. I mean, many people don't have it. I mean, how is the kind of the housing market over in the U.S. right now? I know that here in Sweden things are tremendously, overpriced, so to speak. It's the value is off the charts, and many people are, borrowing so much money just to buy an apartment or, what have you. And if this potentially then, if the housing market kind of crash or slowly just devalues, many people are going to end up losing a lot of money because of this. How are things in the U.S.?
Well, here in the U.S., things are pretty bad. First of all, for my house personally, in the last 3 years, the value of my house has dropped 20%. And this is a function of the overstating and the overpumping of this housing bubble, which is something that is going to, at some point, collapse and burst.
Do you think so? Not just a kind of a slow, slow devaluation of the market, but do you think that this actually will pop at some point?
Yes. In fact, over the past 2 years, also what has happened is we've